Alright guys, welcome back to the Patreon page. Welcome to a new video. In this video, I'm going to talk about something that I'm asked about quite a bit. And I have a few videos about this, but they're old. So let's do an update. I want to talk about the intentional retention of the seminal fluid. Now, I know this might be kind of a intimate subject, if you will. But we're going to talk about sex and the loss of energy during sex. We're going to talk about the detrimental effects of chronic masturbation as well, the loss of the semen. So, again, this is kind of a more personal subject, but it's something that we really need to address because constant over-sexual stimulation can cause a lot of problems. Now, before we continue, I just want to say that in no way, shape, or form am I against sexual activity, and I'm not even against masturbation. They can be very pleasurable, very relieving rituals, if you want to call them that. But it can get to a point where it can become an addiction, and anytime you run into an addiction, you run the risk of serious consequences because what's a common theme with addictions, you guys? Well, not only do they end up running our lives and controlling us, we become slaves to the addiction, but addictions, more often than not, if it's not a beneficial addiction like being addicted to health, they drain your vitality, they drain your vigor, they drain your strength, they drain your clarity, they drain your peace of mind. And that's largely, folks, because when you lose your vitality, your mind gets run down. Your thoughts become haywire. They actually begin to work against you. And this is largely, again, because when you're under the servitude or when you're a slave to a toxic addiction, it cripples you. And when you're crippled, you're not your complete being now, are you? So this is going to be an audio upload, unfortunately. Where I'm walking right now, the light isn't all that great, so we're just going to do an audio upload. But we'll do some video format videos about this subject as well. So, folks, if you study, first and foremost, what the Gnostics said about sexual energy, you will find that the Gnostics, which are basically like the original Christians, if you will, and we've gone over that in the past. We've gone over in many videos how the modern Bible, the King James Version, etc., and multiple others are kind of like modified, bastardized versions of ancient Gnostic texts. And when Christianity and Catholicism became weaponized, politicized, organized religions, they ended up considering the Gnostics heretics. And at one point in time, the Gnostics were even condemned to death because of their beliefs. And the Gnostics, ladies and gentlemen, were a very pure group of devout followers of Christ. But unlike modern Christianity and Catholicism, Gnosticism spreads the fact, not the idea, but the fact that only through living like Christ do we attain what they called the spark. And the spark, ladies and gentlemen, is the Kundalini energy. What do sparks do? Sparks light fires. The spark is a metaphor for the Cossegial Church, or the Cossacks, becoming ignited with the flames of Kundalini, where they rise up the Sushumna and pass through the 33 main vertebrae on the stairway of heaven, the spine, on their ascent towards the promised land, which is the brain. The spark can become a flame, the Gnostic spark, and that flame can become a fire. And if that fire can rise up the spine, and it's not literal fire, it's metaphoric fire or ether, if the fire can rise up the spine, it can get crucified at the base of the skull and rise into the promised land and allow an individual to attain what's known as Christ consciousness. Christ consciousness allows us to access the full scope of the electromagnetic spectrum. It allows us to access all of the dormant regions of our brain and our anatomy, and we take what's known as the 13th step when we enter into the promised land, the supercomputer parts of the brain that are enlightened through Kundalini, and we access what's known as the monad, which to the Gnostics, the monad was the true living and hidden God contained within us. And through accessing the monad, we access the pleroma, the realm of lights, while in third density. This is why there's much truth in the biblical passage, folks, that through Christ we know God. Well, Christ is the Kundalini energy. Through the Kundalini energy rising into the brain, we know God, the monad. So it's crucial to understand all these things about Gnosticism, at least the foundation of the terms they use in kind of a rough philosophical foundation of their beliefs, because it ties directly to the loss of sexual energy, which the Gnostics were very adamant on educating about the role of sexual energy in the enlightenment process. Now, obviously, Gnosticism has become a hodgepodge here in 2021. There's so many different renditions of belief about it and so many ways of interpreting it, and people have muddled the idea down to like this nub of what it once was. Gnosticism, although a beautiful path, can be somewhat misleading, because if you approach Gnosticism in 2021, there's, again, so much muddling of the original material. And there's also a lot of big words that the Gnostics used, and there's so many branches of Gnosticism that it can become somewhat difficult to approach. But I teach a very basic foundation of Gnosticism. I believe that we should try to live like Christ. We should not just worship Christ. We should use Christ as a template on which to base our actions off of. Kind of a rubric of sorts, or a key, like a key on a map. Well, Lunabug. So, again, I don't want to make this some huge Gnosticism rant, but there's some crucial foundational stuff that I think can help you greatly on your path. Now, I'm not judging people if they want to follow modern Christianity, modern Catholicism, or whatever path you wish to take. I'm just sharing with you what works for me and what continues to work for me. But again, I don't mean to be an asshole when I say that, Christianity has become a weaponized, politicized, almost military industrial-sized complex, excuse me. I don't mean to sound like an asshole when I say that modern Christianity and Catholicism and many other religions have become politicized. I'm just sharing with you the truth as I see it. And there's a lot of evidence to back up what I just said. But that's besides the point. I think most Christians who follow Christianity are in it because they want to live a life of purity, and I can't bash that in any way, shape, or form. I just want to be honest with you in the long run. So that's why I said those things about Christianity and Catholicism. What you'll find, however, is that if you study Gnosticism, you'll find that much of what modern Christianity and Catholicism, etc., talks about, even like esoteric Christianity, it's based on the teachings of Christ that the Gnostics taught. And one of the things that the Gnostics taught and really tried to drive home was the importance of the preservation of vital energy. So what is vital energy, folks? Well, vital energy is multiple things. Vital energy is the sustenance, at least when we're talking about human beings, the sustenance of energy that permeates through our organism and our mind, that keeps us alert and alive, keeps our metabolic functions operating at an all-time high, etc. Vital energy, folks, is what allows the cells to communicate with one another, to relay messages back and forth with one another. Vital energy is the metabolism. Vital energy are the organs being able to operate the way that they were designed to operate. Vital energy is the reserves that we have in our body and in our consciousness and our mind and our emotional field and in our subconscious that literally keeps us alive, alert, keeps our heart beating. Vital energy is the spark of electricity that keeps our heart beating. Vital energy is the oxygen that moves through our system. It is the blood. But it is also largely anchored in sexual energy. This is crucial to understand. So let's put it this way, you guys. Let's really try to drive this home and make it somewhat basic. When a man ejaculates into a woman, the sperm and the egg have the ability to produce a new life form, to literally create the genesis of life. Think about that for a moment. Sexual energy has the potency, the absolutely monumental nuclear potency, if you will, to create a new life form. Obviously, we're dealing with something remarkably intense and strong. It's also remarkably pleasurable. Now, I think that this is part of our innate design, our inherent design. I believe that God wanted sexual reproduction to be a very pleasurable, very exciting, very stimulating thing. Because here's the thing, guys. If sex was a chore, if it was boring, if it was not pleasurable, what would probably happen? Well, there's a good chance that we wouldn't be around today, right? There's a very good chance that we would not be around. Because if reproducing life was similar to like running 5 miles, if reproducing life was similar to having to lift weights, if reproducing life was as boring as working all day, there's a good chance that we would have been extinct a long time ago. So obviously there's a method to why sexual energy, experimenting with it, experiencing it, etc., is remarkably blissful and enjoyable. It's also, if done properly, a very potent ritual to allow a man and a woman to unite. Sex can be very euphoric. It can be very expansive. It can be life-changing. Now, here's where the problem lies. For one, there's a general consensus upheld by the system that does not promote the remarkably potent and spiritual qualities of sex. The idea, the concept, the philosophy of sex has been remarkably downregulated. And it's advertised in a way that's very animal. It's very non-limited. Or it's very limited, excuse me. Big verbal slip up there. So there is this idea here in the Matrix that sex is first and foremost just a means to an end, a means to reproduce. But there's also a huge promotion of the idea that it's very pleasurable, and although it is, that's marketed, you guys. It's marketed to make romance novels and romance movies and this, that, and the other. And I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong. What I am, however, saying is that the way that sexual energy is promoted here in the Matrix, it specifically leaves out an overarching spiritual theme. And if you ask me, the act of reproducing life is a remarkably spiritual thing. It's the epitome of spirituality, to bring life, to weave life almost out of nothing through a very intimate act of two human beings uniting in a sexual context, in a loving context. But here's the other thing that culture, for the most part, does not tell the people, or maybe they do it on purpose. It wouldn't shock me. Culture upholds this strange overarching idea about sex where they do not tell people, or they do not drive home the fact that it takes remarkably large amounts of energy away from the body when it is performed. Now, I'm speaking on behalf of men because I am a man. I cannot speak on behalf of women because I am not a woman. When a man loses his ejaculative seed, his semen, significant amounts of energy are lost, or is lost. This is why when a man ejaculates, oftentimes he feels sleepy, he feels drained, he might feel peaceful, but oftentimes people, especially men who masturbate chronically, when they actually ejaculate, they feel almost guilty. Now, if you ask me, these are just signs of energetic loss. especially this sheer sleepiness. Now, you could say it's because of dopamine release and this, that, and the other. And although there's some scientific basis to say that, the dopamine release and the pleasure that you just experienced, as well as the release, is what's causing you to be sleepy, you just need to sleep it off, blah, blah, blah. But on a more deeper level, you guys, I believe that these are subconscious signs and emotional permutations that move through us that are trying to get us on course. It's like you ejaculate and you feel totally drained. You ejaculate and sometimes you feel guilty. This, that, and the other. These are, to some extent, or they could be, I don't have proof that they are, but it almost seems like they're signs that, they're warning signs that you're losing energy. So here's the thing, you guys, and bear with me because I'm trying to drive home multiple things at once. Sex is much different than masturbation, and we're going to talk about masturbation right now and really try to drive it home. I'm trying to be kind of quiet while I walk through where I am because there's people here. Ouch, just stepped on a thorn. Let me pull these thorns out of my feet, you guys. There's people here and I don't want to run around being overly verbal about this. Come on, Luna. Let's just move through here. Masturbation is, in my opinion, not a bad thing. But if it's being done chronically, it becomes an escape. It's a pleasure trap. It feels very good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to sit up here and act like I don't think that it feels good, because that would be a lie. Most people find sexual release and stimulation very pleasurable. So again, I'm not going to get up here and say that, that I don't do it myself, because what's the point? I'm not going to put myself on a pedestal and act like I don't do things that I do. Again, I told you guys that this video would be somewhat intimate. There's going to be some kind of more personal details laid out. But here's the thing, you guys. Occasional release is not necessarily an issue. It's when it becomes chronic. It's when it becomes so strong that you need to do it to find that satisfaction from it. Does that make sense? That was kind of a word soup. So think about it this way, you guys. Anytime you ejaculate as a man, you end up losing the fluids, the sexual fluids that literally are so potent that they have the ability to fertilize a female egg and create a life form. That is something that is remarkably potent. Just the concept or the fact of that the seminal fluid, which Samuel Anwar called the seminal liquor, has the ability to mix with the female constituents for creating life and literally give the spark or create the spark with the female to create a new life. Obviously, we're dealing with something remarkably potent here. It's not just, it felt good and, oh man, I'm relieved. No, those fluids are remarkably potent. So think about it this way. Imagine the type of power that could be obtained through the structured and intelligent retaining of these fluids. Now, I'm not saying that you have to just never do these things again and never ejaculate. I am, however, saying that imagine just for a moment if you created a regimen for masturbation and sexual release, if you created some structure to it, if you created kind of a protocol. And no one's saying that you can't masturbate. No one's saying that you can't have sex. In fact, you guys, and I'm going to say something that a lot of people, aren't saying about not ejaculating. You could masturbate every day and not ejaculate. This is what's known as Karezza. 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 Karezza is the engagement or the engaging in of sexuality without the loss of sexual fluids. And the Gnostics talked extensively about this. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, there are even ways to impregnate a woman as a man while having sex without actually ejaculating. Yes, that's true. This is the foundation of what's known as the Immaculate Conception. So again, I'm going to say something that some people might not want to hear. Some people have attached a negative stigma to these terms, but when a man is having sex with a woman, if he is remarkably aroused, there is a significant of what's known as pre-ejaculate or pre-cum that is generated at the tip of the penis. That pre-cum can impregnate a woman. You can impregnate a woman without fully ejaculating, without reaching complete climax. Now, simultaneously, if you were to have sex with a woman through Karezza, again, Karezza is the engaging in of sexual activity without reaching a climax, without having an orgasm. If you were to retain the potent energy that was generated between man and woman in your system without losing the sexual fluids, that potent amount of energy would then be reverted into the system. It would enliven the senses. It would invigorate the cells. It would invigorate and strengthen the mind if those energies, if those fluids were not lost. We can consider this a form of charging a battery. And that's what sexual energy does. Kundalini is a sexual energy. Ladies and gentlemen, it is generated in the pelvic bone, in what the Mexican shamans call the scorpion's tail. The scorpion's tail is the tip of the coccygeal bone, the coccyx, which Samael Anwar referred to as the coccygeal church. This coccygeal church generates largely energy from the Muladhara chakra and diverts it into the genitals, into the lower part of the pelvic bone. The genesis of this energy is remarkably potent. It is so potent that no amount of words with the English language, or any language for that matter, can be able to encapsulate it. Again, sexual energy is what creates the spark, the friction, the necessary union of opposites that causes Kundalini to not only be sparked in the coccygeal church, but to rise up the Sushumna. And the Sushumna is the main energetic channel that runs like a column of light through the cerebral spinal system. It is the pathway that Kundalini takes on its path up the spinal shaft, the staff of Ra, on its ascent towards the brain, the promised land, the crystal computer. So here's the thing, you guys. Kundalini energy, which is a remarkably potent sexual energy, is sparked at the Muladhara chakra, the foundational church of God, the housing of Christ. And it moves, if it sparks, it moves energy, or prana, up the Sushumna and through two main paths that work through the nerves of the cerebral spinal system. These two paths are known as the Ida and the Pingala. They're also referred to by Gnostics or alchemists as Adam and Eve, male and female energy, solar and lunar energy, electrical opposites that create a union that cause the rising of the prana up the Sushumna. I hope that makes sense. I really do. Some of these things are rather difficult to explain. From a more left-hand path perspective, you guys, these energies, these two nadis, they're called. Let me lay down a foundational. Let me lay down the foundation a little bit here, you guys. Excuse me. We got to go back in time a little bit. There are three main channels that Kundalini moves through the cerebral spinal system. There are far more than three, but the three main channels, in fact, there's thousands of channels, but the three main channels that Kundalini rises up, the electrical circuit, are known as the Ida, the Pingala, and the Sushumna. The Sushumna is the central energy channel that moves through the cerebral spinal system. It's a shaft that goes up it, literally. The Ida and the Pingala, also known as Adam and Eve, or from a left-hand perspective, Samael and Lilith. The Sushumna goes up the spine, and the Ida and the Pingala, or Adam and Eve, move through the nerves and the electrical circuitry of the spine. It moves like these two channels in tandem with the Sushumna rising straight up. These two channels work in a helical conical fashion up the spine like a snake, like a DNA helix. Where was I going with all this? I'm bringing this up, ladies and gentlemen, because Kundalini is a sexual energy that moves up these channels like rising serpents on their ascent towards the brain. Now, here's the thing. Sexual energy, in my opinion, and this is built off the foundational wisdom of the Gnostics, sexual energy was designed by God to create the invigoration or stimulate the movement of these three main channels of energy. Sexual energy, in my opinion, and I know this goes against popular belief, but I believe sexual energy was designed to create the necessary friction of sexual energy to cause the invigoration of the three main channels of Kundalini. I believe that sexual energy is actually designed, or was designed before we lost our ways, to keep Kundalini energy moving through our energy body, moving through our anatomy. And thus, instead of losing the sexual energy through ejaculation, it would be brought through the electrical systems of the body, causing a charging of the chakra churches and all of the meridians, and thus allowing us to stay in a perpetual state of what's known as Christ consciousness. The Buddha might refer to this as nirvana. Now, here's one of the most important things to remember, folks. When Kundalini energy, the sexual energy of Kundalini, moves through the spine and through all of our cells and floods our brain with melanin and this, that, and the other, it does one very, very special thing. It creates what's known as the full body orgasm. Instead of feeling pleasure in the genitals and the pelvic region, which is felt upon ejaculation, climax, and orgasm through physical sex or masturbation, instead of that, the entire body is drenched in the bliss of the orgasm. Every single one of your 100 trillion plus cells, every hair follicle, every pore on your body, every organ, every tissue, every bone becomes drenched in the nirvana of sexual pleasure. This is a remarkably difficult thing to explain, and it's even more difficult to comprehend because we've been taught through culture that the epitome of sexual pleasure and release is achieved through the psychology and the sexual organs, you guys. When in fact, there is a way through Kundalini rising to achieve an orgasm throughout your entire body. In fact, and I've been saying this for years, you guys. I've been saying for years that the pleasure of Kundalini feels so good if it actually gets into the head that it causes all of the hair on your arms and on your legs and on your stomach. For some reason, it does not cause the hair on your head to rise, but it causes all of the hairs on your body to rise. It's like a static electricity. You have so much electricity and so much divine prana moving through you that your body becomes an attenuating antenna for the super divine. And when this is achieved, your body is so stimulated that all your hairs stick up on end and they act like the antenna that they were designed to be. These hairs stick up on end when you achieve the full body orgasm. Why do you think the Buddha could sit under a tree for 8 hours or longer without even moving a muscle? It's because he felt so good in a way that we don't even know how to comprehend. He felt so good and so connected to God. He was being drenched in what's known as God intoxication to such an extent that he didn't even feel or think about moving. Now, when we think about feeling good, ladies and gentlemen, We think of like here in the culture, like, oh, I have a bunch of money, I feel good, or I've got this beautiful wife or this beautiful husband, I feel good, everything seems to be working for me. Oh, this is great. But guys, these are material illusions, and I'm not saying they aren't valid. I am, however, saying that there's an overarching reality that we've become completely unaware of here in culture, whereby we were designed to feel good in a way that most people don't even know how to comprehend. When Kundalini moves through us, we experience states of beautiful non-causal joy and ecstasy, literal ecstasy. What do you think I mean when I say ecstasy? I'm not talking about a drug. In fact, the way that we feel when Kundalini moves through us makes the drug ecstasy seem like Tylenol. It's nothing. And here's the thing, you guys, the full body the full body orgasm is achieved through a state of Christ consciousness. Christ consciousness connects us to God. We are literally touching God when we experience Kundalini. Lay down, Luna. We are touching God. We are touching the divine. The state of connectedness that this allows us to feel is part of what makes it feel so good. We are connected. We are bathing in the fountain, the eternal fountain of revivification. In fact, the Kundalini is the fountain of life. It drenches all of our cells and the reproductive qualities of the sexual energy of Kundalini. The Kundalini moves throughout our entire body and revivifies and transmogrifies everything, our blood, which is the river of life, our bones, etc. The Kundalini energy moves up the Sushumna and up the Adam and Eve channels and opens up all of the dormant chakra churches, which unfold like these hyperdimensional geometric patterns that connect us to the angelic kingdom, the angelic aethers. These chakras create an energetic resonance that permeates into multiple dimensional wavelengths and contacts the angels, and we merge with them through connecting to them. The chakras also, as they unfold, create these bands of light that emanate outside of our body and create the necessary energetic scaffolding for the reobtainment of the aura in the Merkaba, the church, the chariot of God. You guys, we've been lied to about almost everything. It's kind of like what Yoda tells Luke Skywalker in I believe the first Star Wars film, before they became all woke and all this dumb shit once George Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney. Yoda tells Luke that you must unlearn what you've learned. And that because you don't believe, you cannot achieve. You must unlearn what you've learned. Now, it feels good to think that we're so smart. It feels good to think that we're so intelligent because of our degrees and our PhDs and this, that, and the other. Oh, I'm a doctor or I'm a lawyer. Guys, I'm not saying that those aren't valid things. I'm not telling people to bash themselves for their achievements. All I'm trying to say is that there is a bigger story about reality that we were conveniently not told by the New World Order, because they want to use the truth of reality against us by keeping it unaware to us. Does that make sense? They use information against us. They use wisdom against us. They keep us from it. Now, real knowledge, real wisdom is understanding the truth of what we were here for, the truth of our body, the truth of our mind, the potentials that we have. We are not, as a culture, experiencing the expression of those potentials. Our chromosomes are currently locked. Our DNA is not working the way it was designed to. And we are in a genetic warfare right now, folks, whether people want to admit that or not. We are under a massive assault from the food we eat, through the air, which is not prana anymore, folks. I mean, I could go on and on and on forever about that, but on a more deeper, more metaphysical, more psychological level, the real mind control comes from the destruction of what I call perceptual fluidity, which is a term that I first discovered, I believe, from reading Carlos Castaneda's works. I believe Don Juan Matus, the Yaqui Indian sorcerer and brujo who taught Carlos the arts of sorcery throughout his books, I believe that Don Juan is who I first learned the word perceptual fluidity and perceptual rigidity. We are currently stuck in a rigid state of consciousness. There is, however, the ability to reobtain perceptual fluidity. And this comes from the movement and shifting of the assemblage point. Now, I'm not going to get into that in this video, and I shouldn't have even brought it up because I don't want to leave you guys hanging, but I have multiple videos on this Patreon page about the assemblage point. The position of the assemblage point dictates how much of the electromagnetic spectrum our senses can actually interpret. Kundalini moves the assemblage point, it shifts it. And there's a difference between a movement and a shifting. We've gone over this in the past. So let's just get away from all that and get back to the sexual energy aspect of this video, and then we'll wrap it up. The storage, the intentional storage of sexual energy is a very crucial thing, because stored sexual energy, you guys, builds up in the system and it invigorates the senses. Now, again, unlike many people who teach yoga and things like that, I'm in no way, shape, or form telling you to refrain from sexual release and achieving an orgasm. I am, however, saying that a massive amount of power can be reacquired by an individual who structures his or her sexual life and decides to choose to store his or her sexual energy. So Karezza is a great way to do this. Karezza is the act of sexual connection, whether it be masturbation or actually having sex with your partner. And Karezza is the intelligent act of having sex without achieving a climax, achieving an orgasm. Now, this is a very tempting act, because when you're engaging in sexual activity, the mind can become a little too malleable, and you can come up with, rationalizations or justifications on why you should achieve orgasm. Because when you're engaging in something that feels that good and you know that it feels better to achieve an orgasm, it can be very difficult to say no to that. But I can guarantee you, if you practice Karezza intelligently over time, you can actually begin to enjoy or derive just as much pleasure from the friction aspect of it in comparison to the actual loss of energy through the orgasm. So engaging in the friction aspect, or the act of sex without orgasm, it literally, you guys, creates a static electricity. It creates an accumulation of energy that can be stored in the body. And one great thing to do while you're practicing Karezza is to do reverse breathing techniques. The exact technique is contained within John Kreider's book, Vampire's Way. I'm not going to explain how to do it in video format because I don't know how to explain it. I could explain it if I had some diagrams, but for me to try to explain it, especially if you can't see my face in this video, would be a little too difficult. Read John Kreider's book, Vampire's Way. Learn how to do the reverse breathing technique so that you can suck energy into your solar plexus chakra and your lower chakras. Now, you can engage in sex and feel that electricity, feel that energy accumulating, and actually store it in your chakras and recirculate it through your meridians. So what happens when we strategically store sexual energy, when we either don't masturbate or have sex, or engage in it without achieving orgasm? Well, you guys, the senses are invigorated. The consciousness is expanded. Luck actually comes your way. You start to get luckier. Your mind starts to work better, and your confidence is reinvigorated. There is also a way, you guys, to take week-long breaks to 2-week-long breaks from ejaculating. And when you finally do engage in your release, your ejaculation or your orgasm, what you can do is you can imagine the release. When you achieve it, you can close your eyes and imagine all the stored energy that you just stored during that week or 2-week-long period, circulating through your cells, circulating through all of your body, and reinvigorating you with life force. Now, the best way to do this, you guys, is when you take a week or 2-week break, is to every evening and every morning do the full body relaxation exercise, and then do the inner temple exercise. And then while you're in your inner temple, meditate and envision your Svadhisthana chakra and your solar plexus chakras being accumulating all the stored energy that you would normally release through masturbation or an orgasm. Now, obviously, you can even take this to a 3-week thing or a 4-week thing, however long you want. But when you're abstaining, what you're doing is daily, you're envisioning primarily in your Svadhisthana chakra, which is the chakra above your root chakra, which is intimately connected to your sexual life. You want to envision that chakra acting like a vacuum of sorts, accumulating all the stored energy that you would normally be losing through orgasm. So every day you're envisioning this. Every day, whether you're not practicing Karezza, or you are. You're envisioning this Svadhisthana chakra getting brighter and accumulating all the energy that you would normally expel through orgasm. Now, if you're practicing Karezza and you have good visualization skills, which visualization skills get better if you don't lose your seed. Losing your seed is just a way of describing spilling Mercury's cup or, ejaculating. If you don't ejaculate, your visualization skills will slowly get better. But what you want to do if you're practicing Karezza, if you're actually having sex, or even if you're just masturbating, you want to envision during that process, you guys, the Svadhisthana chakra getting brighter and becoming denser and heavier. This will actually, you guys, give jurisdiction to that chakra and make it more mature. And it will slow down the vibratory rate of the other chakras. Now, there's a book that I learned this from, and I'm not going to name it in this video, but I will talk about that book later on down the road. It's a very heavy book, and I don't want to get into it right now, but this is a ritual. It's a modified ritual. I modified it after I read it. I've modified it greatly because in that ritual, the individual tells you not to practice Karezza or any of that. So if you're practicing Karezza while you're either masturbating or having sex with someone, you want to envision the Svadhisthana chakra becoming the main. You want to envision it being the only chakra that you're seeing. This will actually slow down the vibratory rate of the other chakras and give this chakra jurisdiction. And you want to give this chakra jurisdiction during this week to 2 week or longer ritual where you're abstaining from losing energy through sex, through orgasm. Because you want to repopulate this chakra with massive amounts of energy, because this chakra is largely associated with your lifespan and your energy levels. If you can pump energy into this chakra, you're literally filling your body and your mind full of life force. You're giving this chakra, this main chakra, or this very powerful chakra, you're pumping it. It's like with energy, it's like you're plugging it into a charger. And then after daily visualizations while you're abstaining from ejaculation or climax or orgasm, daily visualizations of this chakra, and you want to be able to see it. You don't want to be able to just see it two-dimensionally. You want to be able to envision this chakra as a living entity, a three-dimensional entity that's actually, again, three-dimensional. You want to see it getting brighter and bigger and more potent. When you do release after a week or 2 weeks or however long you do this ritual, you want to really see this chakra. And when you do release, you want to close your eyes and you want to see that chakra bursting all of that accumulated energy up through your body into your brain. You want to see it circulating through your blood. You want to see yourself in your mind's eye getting younger. You want to move it through every corpuscle of your blood, every bone, every tissue, every cell, every nerve, every ganglia, you name it. The way you will feel the night after you do this will be incredible. This is a direct way to reverse aging, because instead of losing the sexual energy, you guys, you are using it wisely to store energy in the chakra associated largely with sex. It's not the only one associated with sex, but you're storing energy in this chakra. And instead of just losing energy now when you have an orgasm, you're actually using the chakras wisely, and you're using it to pump energy and life force, all that stored energy in that chakra throughout your body. This is a beautifully potent ritual. This is a beautiful and potent ritual, folks. The power of this cannot be underestimated. This is a literal way, in my opinion, to reverse aging, because instead of losing our sexual energy just to have an orgasm or to feel good, you're storing energy that you would normally be using in a chakra, and then when you finally do ritualistically have your orgasm, you're using that energy that's stored in the chakra to reanimate and transmogrify the energies of the body with life force. Sexual energy, which is the actual cause of the genesis of all life on earth, at least for human beings. We wouldn't be around without sexual energy. So imagine the potency of proper energy storage of that sexual energy instead of just spilling it. The power of this cannot be underestimated, folks. So we'll talk more about that in the future, that ritual, if you guys want to hear this or hear more about it. But I'm going to wrap this one up, you guys. Long story short, sexual energy is something that, although very pleasurable, should be intelligently harnessed. And I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that I'm a master of this. I'm like anyone else. I like sexual energy. It feels good to have an orgasm. It feels good to engage in sex. But we should take steps daily to learn how to harness that energy and utilize it as more of an energy storage system than just a quick release. Peace be with you.